Infamous 2 is one of the best games I've ever played. With a deep storyline coupled with engaging sandbox gameplay, it improved over the original in every way possible. However, that's not to say that it's perfect. In this video, I'll be going over the worst parts of Infamous 2, which are just sections that frustrated me or could have used a major design overhaul. I'm aware someone known as Literal Charlie has done something similar with Kingdom Hearts, so I might as well say this is inspired from what he did. Also, this is not meant to be a review of Infamous 2, and I'm not listing these in any particular order. So, without further ado, let's get started. At the top, we have Overcharge. Basically, this electrician will tell you that he's got a way to power you up in order to bring back generators sabotaged by the militia. Your goal is to take advantage of the power lines to grind over to the dead generator to energize it. Well, he assures you that there are plenty of grind rails around.
You'll lose the charge quickly if you touch the ground, so stick to power lines. Plenty of those around here.
What he doesn't say is their location isn't always obvious. Sometimes the power lines are to the side of the building or anywhere other than dead center, and considering this is supposed to be a mission where you're supposed to be moving fast as hell, there's no time to stop and look around where your next direction is supposed to be. So most of the time, you might jump straight into the air, hoping that you're going the right way to the next power line, only to end up on a ledge or onto rooftops and discharging. What's more is that enemies will constantly be shooting at you. Again, you don't have time to stand still and fight, lest you lose a charge. Doesn't sound too bad since you're constantly on the move, so they won't hit you, right? Well, you'd think that, except that they won't even flinch when your supercharge connects with them. Therefore, Cole will easily get overwhelmed and take lots of damage, giving this mission an extra layer of unnecessary difficulty. And this isn't just a side mission you do that is a one-time occurrence. Each area you visit has an overcharged side quest with little to no deviation or variety from the main gimmick. Maybe one way to improve this is to show some kind of meter indicating how much charge Cole has left to give the player an idea to how close they are to losing it. I will admit that it did feel a bit arbitrary with how long you can stay on the ground before discharging. Also, maybe make the supercharged electricity stagger the surrounding enemies to make it more bearable, considering Cole is a bit of a glass cannon when it comes to multiple bullets hitting him. But we're not quite done with side quests. Infamous 2's chase missions also got on my nerves. Basically, they involve hunting down a corrupted or Vermac 88 and either following them back to their base or destroying them before they can relay some information. The concept itself might sound simple, but don't be fooled. The corrupted or Vermac will move much faster compared to you, being able to leap across buildings at a quicker pace, whereas Cole will naturally grab onto ledges like a magnet, slowing you down. However, it gets much worse when you have to shoot down 3 fleeing Vermac. My recommendation when dealing with these kinds of missions is to go after the 2 faster ones while saving the slower one for last. And there's a reason for that. Not only will the Vermac refuse to stagger at your bolts, but they will also take an insurmountable amount of hits to defeat. You could hypothetically use grenades and missiles as a more effective means of dispatching them. However, since they're always leaping and bounding about, they can be difficult targets to strike. Therefore, because of all this, it's better to go after the fastest one first, since if you initially pursue the slowest Vermac, it will only give more time for the other 2 to escape. The last thing I'll mention is that these missions are kind of a departure from the core gameplay. I mean, up until now, you've been blasting enemies in a third-person shooter kind of way, and now they're suddenly asking you to give chase to your opponent and use your powers in a method not asked before. Thankfully, this is just a side mission like the aforementioned one. Up next are the powering up missions. In order to restore powered down areas in the map, Cole needs to guide a Tesla missile through several generators while defending them from other militia. Getting the Tesla missile to the generator isn't much of a problem. Sometimes it'll run into walls or die out, but it's not too much of a hassle. Everything else, though, is an issue. First of all, these parts take place within the deactivated areas, which means that the strongest enemies will be lurking in the area, so it isn't rare to have a run-in with a heavy or a missile launcher guy and get blown to bits. And then there's the part where you have to guard a generator while it's powering up. Enemies will be coming at you from all directions, and you have to literally multitask in order to make sure none of them get through to the generator and deactivate it. Of course, if you store up some ionic vortexes, maybe you could blow them out, but most of the time, you'll be stuck in the center and forced to ward them off the best you can until the generator charges up, which can sometimes feel like an eternity. The ideal way to ameliorate this is to stand next to or right on top of the generator and constantly be draining electricity from it after every few seconds, because as mentioned earlier, it is that easy to be gunned down. Also, I made the huge mistake of equipping Nightmare Blast in this mission. My word of advice is definitely don't use it, and replace it with a shockwave ability that actually pushes the enemy away, like Punch Blast. The Nightmare Blast leaves the enemy stationary, which doesn't help much in a mission where you want to prevent yourself from being surrounded as much as possible. Overall, this was one of the sections of the game that if it were to be removed, nothing would be lost. The next one on this list is Desperate Times. I wouldn't say this is a mission that needs to be removed like the last one. It's absolutely necessary, especially considering you meet the best character in the game, Nyx. However, even this mission falls apart. So after the rude introduction, Nyx will take you over to a collection of buildings, telling you,
"But what's up on the roof's even better. Just gotta be a little sneaky about getting up there."
well, so much for being sneaky about it, because regardless of how stealthy you are, you'll find yourself in the middle of a crossfire with militia goons. I think what the game expects you to do is to take out the enemies while jumping from tower to tower. You even have Nyx by your side to help you stabilize them. However, what usually ends up happening, or at least in my case, is you camp behind cover on one of the lower levels while the militia fire at you from the towers above. Nyx doesn't really do too much to make the situation any easier, considering that most of the time she'll temporarily immobilize her opponents inside of an oil glob instead of outright killing them, and she has a tendency to teleport around all over the place instead of fighting by your side. Once in a while, she'll occasionally chuck out a couple of grenades, but it seems like she kind of expects you to take out the militia for her. Also, the militia will shoot at you regardless of whether you're on their individual tower or not, which makes going over there to subdue them inconvenient, since the militia never let up with their gunfire. Although, even when sitting behind cover, sometimes there will be enemies that shoot from behind you, leading to an untimely death. However, all that being said, I don't completely hate this mission. Throwing tar off of buildings, torch militia flags, gave me some Sly 3 deja vu. You even regained some lost health from doing this animation, which kind of helped me whenever I was close to death. I also find it funny how the militia will seize fire when you're doing this, as if they're totally cool with you ruining their boss's flag. Lastly, the whole mission also makes me feel like a mischievous badass, which fits Nyx's personality. I just wish they had made it a bit more bearable, since it seems designed to get you stuck in a corner and fired at like it's a bagside massacre execution. Unfortunately, the shooting sections don't end there, because the next mission on this list is Forced Conduits. It basically has all the same flaws as the previous one, the only difference being that the most annoying enemies will emerge to make handling the mobs more difficult. These shotgun Vermac soldiers will just run up to you and blast you away, but the real culprit are the militia snipers perched on the rooftops of the last warehouse. Getting hit by a sniper bullet will put quite the dent in coal. The thing is, there is no clear way to dodge lasers, so I was forced to play this like Uncharted, constantly rolling out of the way, hoping that this would deter their aim. Of course, once you get past them, it's not over. Entering into the foray is the Ice Titan, which is basically the most developed version of the Vermac. And if I were to be honest, he isn't the worst enemy. However, his attacks will whittle away at your health if you're too careless, and he can tank quite a few hits to the point that just when you think he ought to be dead, he miraculously still has a sliver of health on his bar as if he's got second chance equipped to his body. The last mob-related mission is Torn. Now the initial parts are quite good. The second Karma mission will either feature Cole driving a train into Bertrand's plantation or freeing cops. Nyx's mission, Boom, gives a sense of mayhem as you rampage on the road, while leading the charge provides a sense of being heroic and noble as you free cops from their cages. It's when you get to the plantation the trouble begins. Yes, it's another level where enemies surround you, except this time it's on the open plantation field. This wider environment allows enemies to have a much easier time crowding around you and attacking you in close proximity. Even when Nix and the cops help you, they can only do so much because of how outnumbered you are. What's more is that you have to take out mortar guns while on the plantation. Considering that enemies will protect the guns at all costs, and the animation of Cole destroying it forces him to stand still, it's pretty hard to get close to one without taking immense damage and having to hide behind a tree waiting for your health to return. But then you get to the escort part of this mission. Zeke, you have a pistol. Will you just use it to help me clear these militia instead of sitting on your ass, watching me steadily plow through with Quo through all this gunfire? Yes, it's a short distance to get to the van, but that doesn't mean there's going to be an endless stream of militia opposition. There are so many that there's a guarantee you'll run out of electricity, and the resources to recharge are sparse in this area of the mission, so you'll either desperately look for a source while the militia shoot you or Quo to death, or you'll enemy drain a militia to refill, which can leave both of you open. Also, it does feel like they crowded several militia soldiers into a small area as if you're fighting inside a closet, so it's not too rare that you're blasting away when all of a sudden an unsuspecting grenade explodes in your face. The problem is that the developers tried to fit so many militia in such a small area. The subsequent mission, Stories of the Past, does this a lot better by spreading the enemies out in a linear path so that there's no way an enemy catches you by surprise, but here it literally feels like I'm fighting in a backpack overstuffed with militia. Well, that's enough for the shooting missions, because now we move on to burning wells. So, LaRoche basically promises to hand over a blast core if you're able to put out some wells that the Vermac have destroyed by covering them with a top. The nature of this mission bothers me. It's basically one of those, if you do this, I'll give this in return type of objective. Cole could just go up to LaRoche and tell him to
cut the crap
instead of simply abiding to his wishes. Kind of makes this mission feel unnecessary to an extent, but oh well. I guess they do need the resistance on their side. But what's more is that this makes use of the kinetic pulse throwing ability and has it fulfill a monotonous task. Now, I only like it when it's being used to destroy your enemies and decimate cars. Here it feels so underutilized because you have to throw this cap to great distances in order to cover the wells, and it all just feels like empty space as you pick it up and toss it over and over. Rinse and repeat. What's worse is that while the wells are definitely marked by a smoking trail, the cap isn't. I mean, there's a small sliver of smoke when the cap lands, but it doesn't last long. This cap will blend in so well with the background, no pun intended, that sometimes I'll be running around the area, confused as to where it landed, when it was right next to me all along. The final note I might add is that this is assigned by LaRoche, who's probably the least likable character in this game. I know he lost his wife, but it's hard to feel sorry for him when he does this.
hair pulling.
Watch yourself. I will shoot you.
Seriously, I'm not sure how this guy got the position of leading the charge against an oppressive authoritarian regime. So now it's time to finish it all off. The final two bosses were potential candidates. Killing Zeke is just something I couldn't bring myself to do, and fighting the beast again in the good ending was underwhelming. But here's the thing. While murdering Zeke was something that tugged at my heartstrings and was emotionally cathartic, fighting the beast again just felt like something I did before. Yeah, remember how epic that introduction was when you first meet him? Fighting him again is basically the same thing, except his attacks hit harder and Quo joins him. Seriously, Sucker Punch, I know you never intended the good ending to be canon, but this is a bit of low effort on your part. At least change his attacks up or something. This might be a strange pick because it's not like this part is unbearably difficult, it's just that there was so much build up to the beast, starting from his path of destruction to the revelation of his real intention to raise up as many conduits as possible to save them from the plague, that I felt like this fight should have been more than what it was. So in that sense, you can say it was frustrating because it never fully paid off to what was being built up in the story. Thankfully, it's only a small part to what is otherwise an emotional gut punch of an ending. And those were my picks for the worst parts of Infamous 2. Again, this is probably one of my favorite games of all time, but this doesn't mean that it's without its unpolished parts. To be honest, I think I came across as a bit harsh with some of these. Quite a few of you are probably going to disagree with these picks, so leave a comment down below and let me know why I'm wrong. Thank you for getting this far in the video, and I will see you next time.
End of the road.
Cheers, brother. Half as long.
Twice as bright.